All right, we're live.
Good morning. It is, excuse me, this is Senate Health and Welfare. It is March 18th, and excuse me, committee, had a frog. Need to get, we like frogs, but not in our throats. Okay, so good morning. We had a very uh, long session yesterday with Senate Judiciary and Senate Education in hearing about some of the regulatory events associated with the Kern Hatton School. And I thought we'd just spend a few minutes this morning going through and listing some of the questions that we might like to ask, or some of the open areas for questioning for the DCF related to their investigation or the regulatory authority that they have. We may not have a lot at this point. It may have to wait until DCF and others come in, but I thought it might be helpful just to get your questions. And I asked Ruth to write some down yesterday as we went through. Um, and there were some questions that I asked that I think are pretty important. I think actually Ruth identified one of those. So um, what we'll do is, excuse me, we'll just take a couple of minutes to do this. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it uh, because I will be working with uh, the other chairs to establish a timeline and some testimony that we'll be taking in committee to help us make further recommendations for improvements. Now, this is a difficult situation simply because we are not the judge and jury. We're not really taking testimony about the historical development of this, but we are interested in how our state administration handled this, and also what oversight may or may not have been provided. So, and that is our job as well. So we have to. I think that we should, as going forward, we need to keep all those things in mind. So, committee, I'll open it up and ask you for your thoughts. I did want to um, well, I have some questions, but I guess why don't I open it up and let you offer your thoughts on questions that you'd like to have answered, who you think we should be hearing from, and the direction we might be taking. Um, I value your input on this. Anybody want to start?
Maybe Ruth could read the questions that you have so that we know
Well, I
what's
was
all.
hoping Ruth would raise her hand. Go
Um,
for it, Ruth.
well, I was looking through my notes. The main question I think that I identified in our specific jurisdiction was the the relicensing of um, the,
Treatment center.
of the residential care facility, and whether or not when they relinquished that license, how it was done and why it was done. And if it was done in order to avoid further oversight, or if it was done because violations were found, or if it was done for other reasons. So, sort of like the crux of that, because that's the role that DCF plays in terms of oversight of the facility itself. And then there's the other question about the training and reporting of abuse and neglect, and whether or not that has been done correctly by staff at the facility, and also whether or not it in the past and currently, and whether or not DCF has responded appropriately to those complaints. So those were the two sort of areas that seems like in our jurisdiction. There were other questions about AOE's role and judiciary's role, but those were the two that I identified as specific to regulatory oversight in our committee's area.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think from that, as we identify that, then a whole lot of other questions fall out. So if they were licensed to provide treatment services, were adequate treatment services available? So that's under our jurisdiction. What role, if any, did the district office play in reporting? Because that's also key. And then the relicensure every 2 years, and how were the complaints dealt with during the relicensure process, and then, you know, finally it's a 2-year licensing process, and the review is only within the 2 years. So I guess I might ask the question about cumulative effect. So are there little tiny, or there are few complaints every 2 years, and are they repeated? So those are the kinds of questions I think we want to get at and ask, among others. But that is our jurisdiction, and we do need to pay attention to it. Go ahead, Cheryl.
I just was curious to know how long they had the treatment center, you know, the license for the treatment center, and then it just plays into, you know, why at this time is it being not revoked, but
not relicensed.
Not relicensed. Yeah. And yeah, so
I think what you're raising is a good question. It's characterizing the treatment services that were required. So we need to understand what exactly were the treatment services required.
Right. And you said something else that sparked a question, but now I can't think of it.
District offices.
Yeah.
Cumulative effect.
All of those.
Excuse me, I'm really sorry, you guys. I just got some really bad news, and I need to leave the committee for now. And
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Senator
yeah, I'll
Hardy.
be back when I can.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Not a problem. Take care. All right.
Oh dear.
A 2-year review.
2-year review. Oh, there you go. Yes, the 2-year review. Now, isn't the 2-year review looking back? I mean, they talk about the 2-year review as if it were looking forward, but it isn't. You know, what are we looking at when we're doing those reviews?
That is the question. You know, if it's only the 2 years that they're looking at, and or how do they deal with that time frame, and how do they deal with prior time frames and prior complaints?
And the director had talked about the number of complaints per year, which he said were between 6 and 9, I believe.
Yeah.
You know, who do we have documents that show that? You know, have we seen this? How many of them have actually been reported?
Yeah, I think now everything is electronic, but we did hear that there was some flooding in Waterbury that did take out much of the paper, but we want to know if district offices still retain records. We don't, so that the whole record keeping area, you're right, it's probably important.
Okay.
Josh, did you want to have anything?
To be honest, Senator Lyons and Senator Hooker, I would defer to you on most of this, because unfortunately, as you and Senator Campion know, my technology issues we've had the last 2 days here
Okay.
sort of impeded me from hearing all of yesterday's testimony. So I don't want to jump to any conclusions or ask something that may have already been addressed. So I'd ask you take the lead on this one.
All right, good. Well, yeah, and then when you have a chance to review the meeting, that would be probably good. All right, so I think we're just really trying to understand how the DCF process works in licensure, and then how it works with relicensure. And then one of the questions that I have, which I think is important, is it sounded like the decision to go to closure rather than deregulation, denying the license. And closure meant that there was a mutually agreed upon decision. I'm trying to figure out if the investigation and then the decision making is a negotiated process, and what do our statutes say about that? What do the rules say about that? So is it a negotiated process, or is it an inspection and then conclusions drawn and recommendations for licensure or not made? Does that make sense? Am I making sense there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why was this allowed to happen, I guess? I mean, rather than DCF going in and doing an inspection and then revoking the license, where's the authority, or where's the possibility?
How open-ended is it, I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You come to an agreement, and apparently they came to an agreement.
Yeah. All right. Okay, I think, and then anything else? I think we're all very concerned about the employees who were at the school, and some of this is going to spill over into what the education committee is doing, and we'll be involved in that as well, the three of us. But the idea about background checks and how folks are hired and how they're reviewed as employees, all of those things, I think, that spill over into the educational piece, the school piece, rather than the DCF piece. I also had a question about what's happened with the kids that were in state custody, and now where are they? And I'm not sure we got a full answer to that. But
I didn't understand how many kids were there at the time that the license was not renewed.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. I think I've written down, but I think we can ask that question and then look at the disposition for those kids, because they are in the guardianship or the care of the state. And we want to understand maybe what needs were there or are there, and are they being met? That takes a step away from Kern Hatton itself, but it's still within the DCF area.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
All right. Anything else? All right. And
I guess I do have a question, Senator Lyons. Who else are we likely to hear from as these hearings go on?
Well, that's a good question, and we are formulating our with the other chairs, because this is a 3-committee process. We're working on how to build our testimony, but at the same time, work closely to understand the administration's role. So we'll be doing that. And if you have suggestions for folks you would like to hear from, that send those to me and to Nellie, and we'll see what we can do with it.
Okay.
Yeah. My goal at this point is to focus on the relicensure piece and possible recommendations. Obviously, judiciary has its own interests, and judiciary may like to work with us more and have some more joint meetings. Education may or may not. So that's where we are right now, and we are at this stage putting together our next steps.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
But if you have recommendations for who you'd like to hear from, I'm all for it. I mean, it would help significantly.
Okay.
I'm not sure we need to hear directly from complainants. We have a lot of information that we can look at, historical data and other information
Okay.
from kids, I'm just saying, or the
Right.
people who are older now, who are out of the school.
Right. Okay.
All right. And we also know that the school investigation through AOE is ongoing. I think it will be very interesting for our committee to look at the results of that investigation. So I'm going to put that on our list. Certainly the education committee will probably be going through it in more detail, but it may help us to understand what the results of that investigation are. And then there's also the New England accreditation process that is ongoing. And I don't know if we want to stretch ourselves into that area, but certainly we'll see that in education. We do have Nellie did put the report, the closure report on our webpage, so we have that.
Okay.
So my suggestion is before we, we might want to go through that individually, and I might ask for my daily dose coming.
There go your friends.
How close? You must be pretty close to the airport then, huh?
Yeah, I'm not far away. I don't know, 5-6 miles.
So Senator, you said that Nellie had put the report on our website.
Nellie, I'm going to reach out to Nellie. Is that report on our web page?
It was posted for yesterday. I can repost for today if you'd like.
Who's it under, Nellie?
Jennifer Benedict.
Oh, okay.
Believe.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Right. She is the one who's responsible for completing the work. And so we'll definitely hear from her again. We'll hear from all of the folks who were on the call yesterday, on the Zoom yesterday from DCF. So I think it'd be very helpful to go through that report, and that might modify some of sharpen some of the questions that we have, so we can get down to where we need to be in making improvements to the process, should we believe that's necessary. And I'm thinking that there may be some areas for that to happen. We're also we may want to ask her to go through that report with us after we've had a chance to look at it.
That would be a good idea, since it's a long report and has a lot of information in it.
The other thing is to have Ledge Council, and I believe it will be Katie McClinn. Jen, would it be Katie, to help us understand what the current statute says around this? Or would that?
I think it depends whether you're looking at the licensure piece or the sort of potential child abuse or neglect. aspect.
Okay, and then who would go through the, you're talking about the licensure report, the licensure piece itself, all of it? Or just,
Right, so I think
just
Katie,
reports of child abuse and neglect?
so Katie would work with you, I believe, on licensure issues, DCF licensure issues. Although if there's a report from somebody else, I think it would make sense to have whoever wrote the report go through the report with you.
Yeah, so, yeah, I was thinking of, or, uh-oh. Her first name just escaped me. The person who was on our call yesterday, Benedict.
Jennifer.
Jennifer, thank you. I knew it was a J. I was going to call her Jacqueline. Okay, Jennifer Benedict.
It's an easy one for me to remember.
Yeah, got it.
Popular name.
Okay, so yeah, so we'll have her come in too. It's but I think we do want Katie to go through and share with us a little bit about the licensure procedure as much as she can. There are rules that guide this, so the issue around rules becomes interesting, and so I think the rules probably are best handled through the Department of Children and Families. So, and I will have to ask someone from the department to come in and talk about the rules that are in place, because they did talk about changing those rules, and I'm curious to know what changes they're going to make and how much and what they are. So maybe we can determine how that we should have some influence on the changes. So the rulemaking process is separate from our committee until it gets to the Legislative Committee on Rules, and then it goes through the chair. So any rule changes would come to me and go to Ann Pugh, and then we would say, yes, it is or is not consistent with the statutes, with legislation. So before it gets that far, I think we want to know that we've looked at the statute and we've looked at the rules and we've looked at the process. So we have an idea of how those changes are being made and whether we'd like to influence those changes through legislation. Okay. So I think we'll ask Sean Brown, and he can provide us with the right person from DCF to go through the rules that exist for the licensure process.
Send us that survey, Senator.
Well, let's see. There just went, I forget how many millions of dollars every time it flies. There's two more. A lot of money.
It's pretty loud. Okay.
Okay, which is why being in the State House makes it a lot easier. One of the reasons. Jen, is there anything else regarding the statutory review or rules that you can think of that would help us as we're going through this?
No, I mean, it sounds like you were asking the right questions as far as looking into what the licensure, what the parameters for the licensure issues are now, so that you can understand potential changes and also to understand sort of what goes into that licensure process. So I think you're asking good questions that sound like they're designed to get you in more information so that you can make decisions about whether there need to be changes in the legislation or through legislation.
Yeah. And then another question that I think as we dive into the whole area of child abuse and neglect, and perhaps getting Linda Johnson in, because she's her organization works on this all the time, but also DCF folks, is how, and I don't know, maybe, and this is also a Katie question, our definition of child abuse and neglect.
So that's
How
going to
do
be
you
a Bryn
define-
question.
Is that a Bryn question?
That's a Bryn question.
We'll get a Bryn in, we'll
Yes,
have
and
Bryn
we-
in.
Do have statutes specifically on that with definitions,
one,
definitions included.
That one, and then I'd also like to have, who, is it Bryn or Katie or you on mandatory reporters?
That would be Bryn as well. That's related to the child abuse and neglect.
And I think that judiciary is also interested in that. So it's sounding like we're building some topics for a joint meeting with them. And I'll take
Yeah.
that to the chairs meeting when we talk together.
Okay.
So it seems to me we're going to have to consider and talk first with Bryn on the definition and what's in statute. And I'm going to stop talking for a minute, please. What's in statute, and then talk with DCF about how their rules interpret that statute. I'm not sure when those rules were written. They may have been updated a few years ago, and I'm not sure how I do remember when we went through mandatory reporter several years ago and added some mandatory reporters into that statute through Health and Welfare Committee, and I was involved in that. So it will be important to have Bryn go through that with us. But then to ask DCF how that fits with what's happened at Kern Hatton. So this one really dives down into the complaints that we've heard. So we've just moved from a high level of relicensure issues, and now we're moving slowly down into the very specific and trying to understand the relationship between our statutes, the rules, and boots on the ground, what's actually happened. So after Bryn on that, mandatory reporters and abuse and neglect, we're going to have DCF in to talk about that. So there are, I think, 18 or 20 of these jets, and if they all take off at once, or we get more than 8 or 10 of them, it takes some time. And then they come back and land when I'm talking on the floor. They have good timing. All right, one more, and then I'll talk. So, Josh, you're muted, so go for it.
I was just going to ask if they ever offered to take the senior senator from Chittenden County for a ride.
No, but my husband's gone up on the F-16s. I think it was the F-16s or the ones before. Yeah, he's done that. He did some. He talked with them about balance issues, as he's an ear, nose, throat physician. So he talked with them about.
Oh, he is.
inner
Oh, okay.
ear. Yeah. All right. That was a while ago. Okay. Anything else, committee, on this seems like the appropriate direction for us, I would think. Is there anything that we're sort of missing here? And I know that as we hear from the mandatory reporting piece will also be in education. It will be in judiciary, and it will be with us. So we'll try to coordinate. That's the reason for our list, so that we can coordinate with other committees about meeting together to be more efficient in the use of our time and the time of others.
And Senator, despite the fact that the license has not been renewed for a residential treatment center, there's still the mandatory reporting that goes on from the facility to the state whenever
Yep.
there's an issue. So that,
So now that it would be the school teachers and the school counselors who have that responsibility. So I think the reporting goes to the AOE. In the case of DCF, where there be children in the care of the state, that reporting would go to DCF. I think, and we'll have to clarify that with
yeah,
Bryn.
because just, I mean, regardless if it's a child abuse issue,
It
I'm
should go
wondering
to
where it's gonna
DCF.
go.
That's why we're gonna have to wait and go back and look at that statute. I'm not clear. I don't remember exactly the language in the statute. Unless Jen does, we will just, no, I know it's not.
I will defer to Bryn for that discussion.
Yeah, so once we, I think that generally people do not understand that, once we write statutes and we ask for rules and we approve the rules, then the work is done by the administration. So, but it's important for us to maintain an oversight role. So, I guess the question that we have to ask ourselves is, how frequently are we providing oversight? And once the relicensure has happened, those every 2 years, do we get notice of that? And if we get notice of that, I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen notice of that. But we should probably consider whether or not notice of relicensure for any of our organizations might suggest some kind of review on our part. Does that make sense?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I don't either. We're going to
know.
have
And
to
I'm
look and
wondering
see.
if it's just up to DCF to do the review, and
No, yeah. Oh, I think you misinterpreted what I said, but go ahead.
No, I'm just wondering, how much of it has to come back to the legislature, or where does this, how do we?
I guess it would be a quick email to us, to the chairs of committees that say, this private institution has been renewed and DCF has relicensed, period. I mean, that would be sufficient.
And I think my big concern is just how much oversight is DCF able to do, and how much
do they have
the authority to do it, and have they been doing it? I guess those are the questions I have.
You mean after the closure piece, after they're no longer licensed?
No, I mean even once with a licensed institution.
Yeah, okay.
And
how many times are they allowed to go in and do spot checks, investigations, respond to complaints?
Yeah, there have been lots of complaints, and they seem to have been accumulating.
Yeah, that's the key. All right. That's an important question.
Okay. All right. So.
All right.
So I've been making notes of all of this. I'm going to send it to Bryn and Katie so that they are at least aware of what your thinking is.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Can you send that to me as well? I'll use it in my meet. I have it all written. I have a lot written down, but I'll use it when I meet with the chairs.
Sure. Hopefully I have accurately reflected what you all said.
Well, I'll, we'll always add, no question. Josh or Cheryl, Senator Hooker, Senator Terenzini.
There's a lot.
There is a lot. And I mean, I think our goal is to ensure that whenever children in the care of the state are placed in any facility, that there's a positive culture, and that children are well served. That's the goal. We want to make sure that that happens.
And
And
especially
so,
when,
huh?
I'd say especially when we're placing children in the private sector. I
The
mean,
private sector.
yeah,
And so, and that actually, that would be a good question to ask is, what's the difference between the public and private sector with all of this?
what kind of access does DCF
Yeah,
have?
yeah,
And authority does CCF?
yeah, that's your question. That's very
Yeah.
good. All right. Anything else? Anything else?
Nope.
This is a very good, this is a good start. We need to continue to focus on our role and our responsibilities. And it could get difficult.
But it's interesting because I keep going back and forth with the three of us on education. It's hard
Yeah.
to differentiate, the committee
Yeah,
that it
well,
belongs.
yeah, you're right. But when we hear the report that's coming to us from AOE, and then we start learning about mandatory reporters, it's going to get even worse.
Well, I think
But
overall we'll have to hopefully find something that covers everything. I don't know, and that's
no,
why it's
no,
important.
certainly it's going to have to be coordinated.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing that we're here together. We don't have anyone from judiciary, but I think we'll be able to meet with them, and we'll stay coordinated.
Okay.
The civil and criminal penalty piece is really within the judicial area, but it does link in with how we define child abuse and neglect, and how it is responded to. So there's a flow there from one to the other.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So I'm ready to give ourselves a break until we hear from Commissioner Squirrel, unless there's anything further you'd like to discuss on this issue. Jen, how are you?
Just one unrelated update in case you're not aware.
Okay.
S117.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up when we got
Okay.
back together, but I'm happy to do it now. But let's do that when we come back together, because our minds are not there right now.
That's fine. Let me
Yeah,
know
I
when
had
to.
3 bills I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
So yeah,
Great.
thank you.
I'm
But
going to
thanks
jump
for
over to
bringing it
another
up.
meeting, but okay. As
Yeah,
long as it's on your radar.
we're good. It is, unfortunately. All right. And my little hamster's been thinking about how to resolve that issue, but so we'll see how it goes. Anything else, committee? Are you fine with taking a little break? Good. So we'll take a break here until about 10:20. Come back a little bit before our Nellie. Is it 10:30 that we have Commissioner Squirrel?
Yes.
Okay, good. So okay, so we'll take a break until about 10:20. In the meantime, Nellie has put a bill that we're going to get, H210, up on the chat, and that Josh, you were interested in that. So but we're going to talk about that later. So Nellie, we'll
Thank you.
go on break off of YouTube, and then we'll come back about 10:20 to complete our work for the day.